I know a lot of people have questions about JCAP, JAMS, Jam Copy, and the other rights organizations. Certainly, intellectual property rights are important, and understanding the nuances between all of them is very important, which is why we have the workshop. So it segues perfectly to Mr. Evon Mullings' presentation. He's representing the Jamaica Music Society, otherwise known as JAMS. Please make him welcome. I just wanted to make sure we could all hear you. Good to see you. Thank you, Evon.
All right. Yes, that sounds a lot better. All right. So, Mr. Ricardo Suave, big up yourself. You don't remember me, but I remember you, man. All right. So, listen. How many of you here actually remember MySpace? It was mentioned earlier. How many of you actually had a MySpace page? Okay, so I know the lay of the land. You probably still have it, you know. Yes, yes. I checked a couple of years ago and it was still up. Yes, yes, I think it may still be up, right? So I'm actually going to be taking a deep dive into rights management, royalties, copyrights, neighboring rights, and so forth. And I said deep dive because it can get a bit involved. And even though quite a bit has already been gone over by the earlier presenters, Lloyd Leng, I'm not sure if he's still here, but Lloyd Leng, Chantal just now, I'm actually going to be going over some of those the content, inadvertently along the way. So bear with us if there's some amount of repetition. But I like to think of it this way. If it gets repeated, then treat it as a seed that was planted that's now being nurtured, and see it's being soaked in more and more. All right, so I think I have a clicker here, yes? Right. So I'm going to start from the very basics, the fundamentals of what is copyright. Chantal spoke about it, but I'm going to emphasize or re-emphasize it. So copyright is the legal right that protects the original works of authorship. So you've created something, whether it's the lyrics to a song, you've made a beat, you've actually produced a sound recording, a complete work, you own rights to those elements, yes? Or if you've written a book, etc. So that's what copyright does. It gives you legal protection over your creativity. Now, when we speak about an author, typically you speak about an author in the sense of someone who writes a book or who maybe writes lyrics. That's the context it's normally done in. But there's also the author of the sound recording as well. That's a new concept to you, the author of the sound recording, right? So in the Copyright Act, they are referred to as phonogram producers. And that is what JAMS does. We represent phonogram producers, or alias record producers, yes? Now, these are the various components in terms of where copyright exists in various works. You have the literary works, and in Jamaica, when you talk about literary works, this will also include written lyrics. There are dramatic works, artistic works, and sound recordings, and musical works. Musical works would be the rhythm, what we call in Jamaica called the rhythm, yes? So the literary work, the lyrics, separate and apart from the musical work, right? Separate and apart from the sound recordings. Okay. I need a bit of help here, it's not, okay, thank you. Now, this slide, if you leave here today and don't remember anything, I want you to remember what's on this slide. It's been mentioned just now, but I'm going to spend a lot of time focusing on these elements, in particular, the economic rights. Because this is where the money is made. But one thing that has been missing has to do with the different roles that you play in the industry and how you're able to make money from these different economic rights, depending on the role that you play. Let me see the hands of actual musicians, players of instruments in the room. How many musicians are here? Okay, beautiful. You're a player of an instrument, you're a musician. How many vocal performers are here? How many artists are here? Performers. Okay, some repetitions. How many record producers are here? Okay. So you're wearing several hats. I see that, and that's good. It's going to be very important for you to follow very closely as we go along, right? Now, the economic rights are the right to make copies of the work. So the recording has been done, and as a producer, in fact, let me just step back 1 second. The right to make copies, the right to distribute, the right to play the music in public, the right to broadcast, that's a separate right, and the right to adapt or to, change the lyrics, change the beat, change the melody. That's what we call adaptation, right? Of course, we have moral rights, which Chantal spoke about very eloquently earlier. Now, who owns the copyrights in these works that we're talking about? Let's start with songwriters and composers. Songwriters and composers, this would be the person or persons involved in the creation of the lyrics and the melody, as well as the musical composition that we call a rhythm. But it's not always the artist. I want you to remember that. So when you go down to JCAP, JCAP represents songwriters and composers, you may go to JCAP because you're simply a songwriter or a man who builds beats. It's not necessarily an artist who goes to JCAP, because there are many persons who write songs, who build beats, who cannot hold a note to save their lives. So when you walk through JCAP's door, you're walking through JCAP's door not as an artist, but as a songwriter or a composer or a publisher. We mentioned publishers. So publishers are really persons who provide support to songwriters and composers, right? And we can get into that a little more later on. Now there's what you call related rights. Chantal spoke about that earlier as copyright and related rights. Now related rights are often treated as a cousin to copyright, but it is in fact copyright nevertheless. It has to do with copyright in the sound recording. The sound recording is a complete work, not the elements of it. It's not just the rhythm nor the lyrics. The sound recording, what we call sound recording, is a complete work that has been released for sale and that gets played on the radio and so forth and so on, which is different from the musical work. Musical work is a rhythm, yes? The sound recording is a complete work. So, who owns related rights? Typically, it's the record producers, record labels, the record companies. And who is a record producer? A record producer can be an individual who has made that investment, and I think Lloyd Lang spoke about it earlier. They're the ones who have invested in the production process. They pay for studio time, pay to mix, pay to master, etc. So that can be an individual, but it can also be an entity. So that could be the record label itself. So when I speak about a producer as I go on, it can be an individual or an entity, yes? And typically when we speak about a producer, we're talking about the executive producer in this sense, because you have executive producer and you have studio producer. The executive producer is typically the one who's making the investment. They're taking the risk and spending the money. Whereas a studio producer typically is someone who's hired by the label or the studio to make sure everything run right, get all the elements together, right? The studio producer is not entitled to what we call the master, that final product. He's being paid by the label to do the work. He's work for hire. So he doesn't own the master, okay? The entity, the producer, the label owns the master. Who owns related rights? Performers also. Now, when we say performers, we're talking about the artists and the musicians. That's what we call a performer. So under the Copyright Act, that's who a performer is. It's the artist, the vocal performer, as well as the actual players of instruments. So those are other rights that you have which are often not spoken of. So yes, you write the lyrics, yes, you're also the producer, but as a performer, you also have rights. And these producers and performers fall under the banner of related rights. I must say, though, where performers are concerned, and note this very carefully, in terms of earnings, you don't have to be an actual trained player of an instrument or a vocal performer in order to earn royalties as a performer. Once you have made an audible contribution to a recording, you qualify as a performer and can get royalties. So if while the session was going on, the engineer said, listen, when you add a clapping sound to this film, who remember the duale and you remember the clapping sound? Whomever that person is who did that is a performer and can qualify for royalties. But you never know that. Yes? So any audible contribution is treated as a performance on the recording. Yes? How can rights owners benefit from their work? So now we're going to revisit the economic rights, and we're going to break down the different groups of rights owners and how each of these economic rights relate to each of them. Let's start with songwriters and composers. So for songwriters and composers, the right to make copies is a right that they have. So essentially, the songwriters, through their publishers and so forth, issue what is called a mechanical license. And this is done through a particular process. Now, if you're a songwriter or a composer, I'm going to mention this from now in case I forget it. You can register to get mechanical royalties. You can register with, for instance, the MLC in the USA, the Mechanical Licensing Collective. In the UK, you have MCPS. So these are bodies that are set up to collect on your behalf as songwriters or composers each time a copy is made. So every time a song is streamed or is downloaded or vinyl is pressed, every time a copy is made, a piece of that comes off. The value of that comes off as a mechanical royalty, and it goes over for songwriters and composers and their publishers. So that's the right to make copies. There's a right to distribute, which is separate and apart from the right to make copies. But typically, they're bundled into one. So, for instance, in the old days, you'd have gone on to Sonic Sounds or Dynamic Sounds, for instance, and there's an agreement where they press for you and they distribute for you. So they're typically bundled up into one in most cases, right? So these are rights that the songwriter has and can benefit from them. So during the distribution process, again, the mechanical rights kick in. In terms of the third right, to perform the works, the recorded music in public performance. As a songwriter, as a composer, you're able to earn here as well. And you earn by then registering with a CMO or a PRO. As a songwriter, you would go to, in Jamaica's case, JCAP. If it's US, it's BMI, ASCAP, SASAC, and All Track, as Lloyd Lang mentioned earlier. That's a new body in the USA, a new PRO in the USA, fairly new. And for UK, you can register with PRS for music, but of course you don't need to register with all of them. You register with one, and you're typically covered globally, right? I understand that we have some Caribbean persons probably online. So for our Caribbean friends and families, in Trinidad, there's a body called COT. They cover songwriters and composers. For the Eastern Caribbean, there's a body called ECHO. They cover songwriters and composers. Germany, GEMA. Japan, jazz rock, etc., etc. Yes? Broadcasting right, which is the fourth right, is separate from the public performance. The public performance is about the actual live performance on stage or the playing of the music in bars, restaurants, hotels, etc. The broadcasting is separate. So it covers your radio, your TV, etc., cable, etc. And again, in order to benefit from this right, you have to now go to a CMO or a PRO because it is difficult for you to manage these rights on your own. Because radio stations need this license, they need this permission, but they can't go around trying to get permission from everybody. And you can't try to go around and license every dance or every stage show to give permission, right? So that's why you use the PRO or the CMO, which is that intermediary. And of course, there's a right to make adaptations. Right, and that is typically something that is cleared on your behalf by a publisher. When someone wants to do over your lyrics or make over your beats and put out a record, then that is handled typically through your publisher or directly by yourself as a songwriter, composer. Artists and musicians, how do these same set of rights relate to you? Remember, you are wearing different caps. So as a performer, as an artist and a musician, not all of them will apply to you in the same way. Let's walk through them. So the right to make copies, performers have no right in this regard. In terms of the distribution right, performers do not also have the distribution right. However, once as an artist, once you've recorded for a producer or a label, you have to give them permission before they can release it. So since 2015, especially under the amendments in 2015, where Chantal, there were some amendments to the Copyright Act here in Jamaica where the producer legally cannot release the recording unless there's permission from the artist. And the artist cannot go and release the music without the producer's permission. Yes? Please take note of that. Not a lot of persons are aware of that. And so that is why it's very important to have these written agreements in place. So that is a right which the performers have, the artists in particular have, that they can, allow the producers to release the recordings and so forth, because you typically have an agreement with the producer where you get your artist royalties. That really happens in Jamaica, right, Mikey Bennett? As an established producer, you know how it goes on the ground. Performing the recording in public, yes, as an artist and as a musician, you can also benefit from this economic right. Now, I must say, these rights are typically called exclusive rights, which means that you can prevent, once it's recorded, released, you can prevent the use, you can ask for it to be taken down because these are exclusive rights to you. However, in the case of performers do not have exclusive rights. So when the song is released, you can't go and say, I want to take down. You can't. You have what is called a remuneration right. You have a right to earn, but not an exclusive right to restrict. Yes? And so that is a right that you have. And again, for 3 and 4, as a performer, you can earn. So you go to the CMO that handles performers' rights. Now, in Jamaica, that is us. That is Jams. So even though I mentioned earlier that we represent producers, we are also representing performers. We are representing performers, however, in terms of the international collections. I'm being told time. Demand me half hour still, Yeah, but we'll work with you, all right? Broadcasting, likewise, you can register with Jams as a performer. You can register with PPL, with Sound Exchange. These are all bodies that represent and collects royalties on behalf of performers, artists. But once you register with one, you don't need to register with all. So when you come to Jams, we collect for you globally. Right now, we're collecting from over 44 different countries. We're seeing royalties from Korea, of all the places, Australia, Bulgaria, Romania, you name it, right? Let's run through quickly. For producers, very important, all the producers, take note, in terms of the economic rights, you are very much there as well. So the right to make copies, you have that right, because you own the master. So you determine the making of the copies. You have the right to distribute. You find a distributor. You go to VPAL or 1RPM, etc., TuneCore, etc., and you get the product out. Likewise, number 3 and number 4, as a producer, similarly, public performance and broadcasting, you're able to earn. So you find a CMO, which in Jamaica's case is Jams, USA is Sound Exchange, UK is PPL, etc., etc. Once you're with one, you're good. So you come to Jams and you're covered globally. All right? I'm going to skip through a couple slides. So collective management is what we do. That describes what we do. We don't just represent an individual, but you all come to us, and we manage the rights on your behalf collectively. So we go and negotiate with the radio stations on your behalf. We collect the license fee and we pay to you, so you don't have to do this individually. So within the Caribbean context, as I quickly run through, and I watch my time, within the Caribbean context, so in Jamaica, there's Jams and JCAP in terms of rights management bodies. In Trinidad, there's COT, and there's TTCO. There's no longer Awesome. I think they had Awesome once upon a time. They no longer have Awesome. These bodies represent songwriters, composers. Barbados, they have COSCAP. It's one body representing all categories of rights owners in Barbados. Right? Eastern Caribbean, there's ECHO, which I mentioned earlier. Specifically to jams, we started in 2007. Right? We are members-based, we're not-for-profit. We're part of the international body, IFPI. Now, you're here to learn about the music business, not entertainment, the business of music, right? And you're being told, very importantly, that you need to register in order to earn. Now, in Jamaica, there's jams, but our equivalent in the UK is PPL. JCAP's equivalent in the UK is PRS. US, jams equivalent is Sound Exchange. JCAP's equivalent is ASCAP, BMI, or SASAC, or All Track. So the idea behind this is that typically in each country that you go, there are these bodies representing the different categories of rights owners. There's hardly ever just one body representing all. Hardly, rarely, right? And so sometimes you have to cover both areas. Right, let me just run through quickly. Now, this is the most important part. I'm going to ask the moderator to allow me the time to walk through this part of it. When we talk about music and music rights, there are typically two broad categories of rights that we're talking about: the master rights and the publishing rights. The master rights and the publishing rights. So if you leave here today and don't remember anything, remember that. The master right is where the rights of the record, the producer, lies. So it covers the actual recorded work, the complete recording. So rights lie in the complete recording. So the producer's rights sit there. The artist also has rights in the recording. So he has a vocal performance, for instance, on the recording. That's where his rights sit. When it comes down to publishing rights, the producer and the artist have zero publishing rights. Zero. Okay? Unless negotiated otherwise. When we talk about publishing rights, we're really and truly talking about the songwriters, the composers, and their publishers. They have publishing rights. So the persons who have written the lyrics, made the beats, etc., they have publishing rights. And from rights, you have royalties. So the master royalties flow from master rights, and that will come for the producers from streaming, so the Spotify, Amazon, etc., radio and TV broadcasts, public places, public performances, and sync. So when the song is placed in a TV advert, etc., or music video, not music video, radio, TV ad, video games, and films. That's where sync licensing comes in. You make revenues there. Publishing, similarly, the same sources, but except that it's the songwriters and composers who are earning on that side, and their publishers. We summarize all the various rights into 4 categories: mechanical royalties, performance royalties, sync, and print. So there are many different royalties, but you can always encapsulate them into those 4 major categories. For the performance royalties, that has to do with the playing of the music. I'm kind of repeating myself here. And here, again, if you lost it in the first time around, for producers, you earn performance royalties by signing up with any of those societies that you see there. For the songwriters and composers, you also earn performance royalties by signing up with JCAP, etc. Right? Mechanical royalties. Mechanical royalties. What are mechanical royalties? We spoke about it earlier. Again, here you're able to earn as a songwriter, composer. Producers and artists do not earn mechanicals. What are mechanicals? So every time the song is copied, then, of course, you're able to earn. In the USA, which is the main music market still, you do not have to give permission or give a mechanical license yourself, or your publisher does not have to. There's what is called a statutory license. So once the song has been released officially, then it can be used. But once you decide to use it without actual permission or contract, then you're going to pay what's called a statutory rate for the mechanical license, which is set by U.S. Copyright Office, right? Sync. I really have to rush through this now. All right. Why am I going to mention this? The recorded music industry last year made $29.6 billion US. Of that, 9.7% was from performance rights, so from collecting society like PPL, jams, sound exchange, and so forth. 9.7% of the total amount of money made was from that. Why is that important? It's important because streaming is now taking up 69%, and as producers in particular, you have to know where the bulk of the money is. So we do have persons who will come to us and they register as producers with us, and they are expecting that the vast majority of their money is going to come from our side of the business. Our side of the business is the pension side of the business. The vast majority of money should be coming from your streaming, from your sales, from your downloads, etc., whether it's physical or digital. Only 9.7% of the total money made comes from performance rights. Okay? Now, take a look at this. As I have, I'm going to take the last 5 minutes and wrap it. Wherever it ends. Are you still with me? All right, nice. Thanks, moderator, for the extra 5 minutes. Now, in 2024, of all the songs that are on Spotify, there are over 202 million songs on Spotify currently, or at least up to 2024. 50 million of those songs were not listened to a single time. 50 million. 175 million were listened to less than 1,000 times. Why is all of this important? It's important because you have to set your expectations realistically. Every single day, close to 100,000 songs are released. Yours is among them. Are you going to be getting 0 streams, 1,000 streams, 10,000, or 1 million? You determine that. But you don't just put the product out on the shelf and believe that is sufficient. There's a lot of work that goes into making sure that you're able to earn from this. Right? And just as a CMO, really, let me just walk through this slide here. What you want to do is to register with a CMO to earn this side of the royalties. You include the registration of the song or the sound recording. You give those details, the ISRC, the artist name, etc. Each time you release music, you ensure that it's registered. If it's not registered with the CMO, there's no eligibility for royalty for that song. You have to tell us that you have released this work and you own this work. You have to tell that to us. And it's the same thing for BMI or ASCAP, etc. You have to notify them, you have to register them. And then all of those other things you have to do. And finally, you have to promote the music. Don't just put the product on the shelf and leave it there. Not because you Google and you see a song come up in the Google search means that your songs are being sold. Why do I say this? I get it every single day. A man come in Google and says, see my song show up there, see them talk about it's being sold. No. It doesn't mean that. Okay? You actually have to put in work in order for you to be able to benefit from your music. And we go through a process to get you paid. We pay 3 times per year. The money gets landed into your bank account once you're earning. They get a statement in your email, right? And this is part of what we do. We use technology. This is about technology. We use an automated airplay monitoring system to track every time our members' songs get played on local radio, every single station, 365 days a year. Once you've registered the songs with us, we know within minutes that your song has been played. And that supports our royalty distribution process. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I know I went over time.
Thanks once again, you didn't. You did very well, very well. And I thank you for your very comprehensive presentation. I saw your slides and I know that you have so much more to say. But I want to ask a question, if I may take moderator's privilege. I appreciate that you shared with us this information and the different rights agencies all across the world. However, I'd like for you to share with us, why should we register with JAMS? Yes, there are others. They're international ones. But we name Jamaicans and we're in Jamaica. And for those online, they are corresponding rights agencies in the territories. Why we shouldn't run a foreign? Why should we stay with our own? I'll ask you to answer that before you go.
Oh, perfect. I mean, we're at 7th Stanton Terrace. If we're not do good, you can come over there and Causeway. All right? But the bottom line, though, is that I say it in jest, but it's true. Because I do come across many, many, many persons who they may go and sign up with a foreign society, and there's an issue, they can't get through, it's strictly by email, etc. That's a part of the problem. And the payments to go internationally. But also, I've seen persons who say, look, JAMS, you've been collecting for me, I think I can do better on my own or by going direct. I've had members, more than I can count on my two hands, who have decided to leave, and I say, no problem, go ahead, release them. And they all come back. Because what they realize is that we're connected into the same system that they're going to register with, except that in a lot of instances, they have to now do themselves a lot of the work. So when you go and sign up directly to, say, a Sound Exchange or even a PPL, you have to now be in their system as an individual, trying to update them system. But when you come to us, we do all of that work for you in terms of the international scene. You don't have to go and register with the different societies. We're covering you for Bulgaria, Italy, etc. You name it. And we do all of that work daily and sometimes in our sleep, like 1, 2, 3.